Brother Paul, thank you for all that you do. Bear with me as I give a brief context to my question. I enjoy reviewing other channel materials such as Bashar, the Z's, and the different collective consciousness of Daniel Creighton. After listening to all the books by the guide, I'm beginning to really notice the similarities between the guide's teachings and others who are channeled. One of which is the guides refer to the upper room in the kingdom, while other entities or beings refer to this as dimensions and densities.
Mhm.
Even though the guides don't focus on those terms, I see the upper room as fourth and fifth dimension or fourth density, and the
Mhm.
kingdom as the sixth dimension or fifth density. To help me correlate between the different channel perspectives, if the guides are willing, I would like to know if my point of view is correct.
I know some of these guys. I think everybody that you mentioned I know, and some are friends. And I respect everybody's work in their own way, but I actually don't read it. So I don't read other channeled work. And the guides have said to me for years that they don't use the language of science because it's going to be outdated in 50 years. And they use music instead. And they talk about octaves and tone, and that's how they teach. I've often personally thought that they were speaking dimensionally, and a couple of times they've used the word begrudgingly. But part of the thing, and I think that this is important to understand, is that in the spiritual communities, there's often a zeitgeist and language that becomes sort of thrown into the collective cauldron and becomes in common usage. And those things also tend to move away fairly quickly. I'm older than you, I suspect. So I remember when everybody was doing 12-strand DNA activations. You don't hear about that anymore. There was some ascension technique that everybody was doing in the New York area when I was in my early 30s, which I just thought was something. I didn't know what it was. So I generally don't go to the zeitgeist, and the guides actually don't with me, and they're intentional about that. That said, I am going to tune in because it's an interesting question to me and see what I hear. The young man is speaking two things. The young man is speaking two things. He wants confirmation. He wants confirmation, what he already believes, of what he already believes. He's trying to engage with the system, and he's trying to engage with the system of dimensional realities, which is simply a name or title, which is simply a name or title to give something, to give something. Now, if you look at an alphabet, the letters in the alphabet, the letters of the alphabet can be claimed in any form, and every book that's been written, and every book that's been written can conform to that alphabet, can conform to that alphabet. If you look at dimensional reality, if you look at dimensional reality in a similar way, you can enter any reality. You can enter any reality with a different code, We would not suggest that the upper room is not the fifth dimension, the fifth dimension, or the kingdom is not the sixth, but those are titles you give things, and indeed the names we give them, are a reclamation of language and concept that pre-exist. You understand the idea of the Christ. You understand the idea of the Christ primarily through the personage of Jesus. When we speak of Christ consciousness, when we speak of Christ consciousness, which is the upper room in the kingdom, which is the being of and in, which is the being of and in, or the realization of union, that can be found through the room, that can be found through the upper room. We are establishing a use of language that gives great permission, the challenge with some language, especially when it veers into the scientific, is that it claims things in very particular ways. We are not saying no. So we are not saying no, but we're expanding beyond that. But we are expanding beyond that to become inclusive of the great mysteries, that have been present prior to the names, that you are utilizing. Indeed, when we teach, and we have been around a long time, we teach with the language we know. We teach with the language we know. Now, the emissary Now, the emissary that comes as Paul, knows the language you teach, knows the language you teach and enjoy. He's curious about it. He is curious about it, but the reason we don't offer it, but the reason we don't offer it is that this is a very specific teaching. It is not meant to be, and it is not meant to be in collusion with another. It does not disrespect others. It does not disrespect others, nor does it about quality of them, nor does it disavow the quality of them. But most anyone who channels, who is authentic in their work is being used in a somewhat singular way, and that is for their benefit, and that is for their benefit, and so the purity of the teaching, and so that the purity of the teaching can be maintained without acclimating to what is public and public usage at any specific time, period. So that was interesting. Thank you for the question.